What are we talking shit about tonight?
I don't know who I am or what I'm doing anymore. Like,
do some DMT, and then your worldview will just come from from whatever experience.
Like, I sat down, I had been like nervous about it for months. I did not want to like have to come and tell them, like, you know, that I
all things collected into a singular unity. Basically, as soon as things separate, you can track time because they're moving within like different orbits to the senior members within a tribe, and they'll have the senior members get together in order to make decisions about the communal well-being of the tribe. Everybody's trying to figure out what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, that I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know who these people are anymore.
So apparently I'm into gay vampire.
And I want to clarify some stuff to ease the tension a bit.
To me, I think religion's just gonna die off. I've heard Jordan Peterson's stuff on it. I think it's full-on cope. Get in there, and if they didn't, then they're screwing around a little bit too much, and I shouldn't believe in it.
You have a very literalist interpretation of history. No, I think, I'm not saying we need a break, but I think we do need a little bit of like a palate cleanser. I don't know if you guys have been keeping up with fucking DGG, but just the whole...
I've been trying not to, like, really hard.
Dude, the Mr. Girl Lavloon arc needs to evolve.
Yeah.
Evolve.
Oh, my goodness.
I'm not saying they don't need to be back. They should be back, but fucking they need to evolve.
Yep. Yeah, I'm actually Destiny has like so many new people in his community too. Like, he's grown so quickly over the last 6 months that I think a lot of them don't even understand the space very well either. And I don't know if you guys know, I'm working on a documentary about like Destiny and like Twitch politics turning into what it is and all of that. And I think like I'm trying my best to like hustle and get this thing out, because I think right now it'll benefit people more than ever to know what all happened before all of this stuff.
In the before times.
Yes. Back in the day.
You know, this is your shot, you know, your opportunity. And the real question is, are you going to let it slip?
I'm making spaghetti tonight, so.
There you go. What's up, Layman?
Hello.
Hi, Layman.
What's up?
How are you? So have you and Anna hung out since you hung out the first time, or do you guys just have a billion fucking pictures together from the one time you hung out?
No, we've spent 3 weeks in total together so far. So the first time was 2 weeks, and then there was 1 week in August, and then I'm going to Indiana for Christmas.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Who's Anna?
Yeah, I'm ready. Anna is my lover.
Nice.
My lover.
Yeah,
imagine,
I see a lot of y'all.
Imagine being a simp, okay?
Pictures on
that's what
Instagram.
Means.
Okay, you're assuming it's mediocre. It is not. She is a good lady, or good lady.
Is she non-binary?
It's not mediocre. They are, yeah.
They are. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, what should I title it? Because I mean, obviously, I could talk shit about Twitch politics or Destiny arcs, or what are we talking shit about tonight?
Generally, that, you know, just whatever. Just talking.
Online politics and Destiny arcs with Tomfoolery and friends.
I mean, there is like one thing that I'd like to pick y'all's brains on. I recently
is anybody banned on Twitch? You're banned?
Of course.
Sorry,
I'm
sorry, I didn't know that you. Yeah, nobody knows who I am.
No, I don't care.
Yeah. I recently left religion, and like I've been like a hardcore Christian my entire life. My brothers are pastors, my dad's a pastor, and it's like a major change in my life. Like as somebody who really like bought into the whole thing, and like my axioms and everything came from religion. My whole life is like just I don't know who I am or what I'm doing anymore. Like it's very confusing, and I was wondering if any of you guys went through like similar things at one point.
Oh yeah, I could give you an essay, but you're talking to the right people. Ukerist, before you give us anything very highbrow, basically, like I was raised Catholic. Well, actually, I was raised Protestant first, then Catholic. My father converted to Catholicism when I was like 10 or 12. We went to mass every Sunday. I've been to a church service every Sunday of my life, 0 to 18. So I like shitloads of knowledge just passed on through osmosis. And then so that's at a really good moral foundation, but I didn't believe in it. Like I really didn't. And what happened was I really struggled because it felt like every time that I was attracted to something like Buddhism or Islam or something, I would bump into a dogma that I just didn't agree with. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, I can't sign on to this new institution. And then one of the things that I was, but layman gave voice to was like perennialism. So basically, as I understand it, and we'll explain it, is it's whatever's true is true. So basically, inside religion, there are a bunch of core truths: honor thy father and mother. You know, it's better to tell the truth than it is to lie. You shouldn't murder people. All that kind of stuff. Reciprocity. Yeah, like, and all of these things are inside religion. And 10,000 years from now, human beings will hopefully still be doing things, and whatever is true now and true then is a part of that like scriptural attempt to understand the moral, the spiritual, and the divine.
Yeah, what the scriptures are doing is basically trying to articulate something that's always kind of been there, you know? They're just doing it in their own sort of like unique kind of socio-cultural ways. That's kind of the general idea. But you can also be a Christian and be a perennialist, or be Islamic and be perennialist. A lot of like the great like perennialist thinkers were religious, but there's also a lot of great perennialist thinkers that were also like agnostic or atheist. Like Aldous Huxley is like, you know, he can explain it from a more like atheistic, agnostic kind of perspective. But then you have people like David Bentley Hart, who's a Christian perennialist, and you can have people who are like Friof Schwann, who was an Islamic Muslim perennialist. So yeah, perennialism is just kind of like describing what is universal amongst the religions, and you know, has a belief that that's true, of course. Those universals that you can find in different religions, the commonalities, you know, kind of setting aside the atheistic perspective, or the more agnostic perspective is kind of like setting aside the differences, just looking at how they unify and seeing if that's describing something that's true.
Mm-hmm.
So usually it comes from this kind of like, from that perspective, it comes from this kind of like spiritually agnostic or spiritual secular kind of foundation, kind of dabbles into the whole like mysticism stuff. A lot of DMT shit is involved in that, and a lot of hallucinogenics, a lot of psilocybin involved in that.
Let's go.
Yeah.
That's
So-
my kind of religion. Let's go.
Maybe that's what you need to do. Do some DMT, and then your worldview will just come from from whatever experience.
I've never done DMT. I've done a lot of acid, a lot of shrooms, you know, peyote, mescaline, stuff like that, but I've never done DMT.
Okay.
I walked into a used bookstore the other day, and like first book they had on like the interesting local finds shelf was like growing psilocybin for fun and profit. I was like, what? What are you selling in here? Like, this is a wacky bookstore. This is just like a normal bookstore.
Yeah. But that's like the more secular perspective of perennialism that I think Connor is more in line with. But then there's the more sort of then there's a more so like traditional view where like you believe in all of those like universals amongst religions, but you believe that there is still a true religion, a religion that is true in its totality. And those universals are just something that, you know, were sort of initialized by like the one God of this religion. So like if you're a Christian perennialist, you'll believe in those universals amongst those religions, and that those can kind of give some unity to the different religions. But ultimately, like the true religion, the one that is like true, independent of just like sort of like, you know, values or cultural values or whatever that it's describing, is still Christianity. So you still believe Christ resurrected from the dead, and you know, God sent him down to earth to die for our sins, the Trinity, yada yada yada. And you just believe that, you know, that Abrahamic God is the one who created all of these sort of like perennial traditions that you can find in other religions.
Yeah,
so,
the way that I was raised, I was like, I never even thought to look into like Darwinism or evolution or things like that, because I was just raised to believe that that was all just bullcrap. Like it's all just like, you know, crazy stuff. And then I was so like sheltered from it all living in Georgia and around other Christians my whole life, that like getting into like the Twitch politics space and meeting nothing but atheists, that like if you don't believe that, you're literally a nutcase. Like I couldn't even talk on the subject. I couldn't even think about it, because I was so just, there was such a big gap between me and them. Then I think it was Not So Erudite, recommended that people should read, what is it? The Sapiens. And so
bitch.
I went and read Sapiens, and that just like was like mind blowing for me to find out like we know so much about this. Like there's so much information there that we actually know, and it's not like really up for question anymore. And this is going to sound really stupid, but then I went and saw Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I walked out of that movie like, I don't believe in God anymore. That's it. Like I don't know what happened in that movie. I don't know what it was. I can't tell you at all, but I walked out of that theater like, I don't believe anymore.
What's the
I don't know what
fucking
it is.
plot of Everything Everywhere All at
Can I
Once that
explain
makes
it?
you down?
It's my favorite movie. Can I talk about this? It's my favorite movie. So
$3
Everything Everywhere All at Once.
$0.43.
It's about
The
this.
modern
It's about
day
this like
debate got
Chinese
boring.
immigrant family,
So, here
and
I am.
they run a
Here's some
little
money.
like
Thank you, Zola.
what the fuck is it? A dryer, like a dryer bit or a cleaner. They run like a laundry clean, a laundromat. That's the word. Laundromat. And oh god, this is gonna sound so fucking stupid to people, but it's an amazing movie, I promise.
It's so good.
So they're dealing with like all of this shit from what's it called in the US? The IRS, the tax people. Is that
Yep.
what the IRS is? Okay. The IRS is like auditing them, and they're fucked, and and the mother in the movie. So it's like a mother and a daughter, mother, father, daughter, and then a grandfather. These are the like four people who live together in this family, and the mother is the main character, and she's kind of a bitch. So like she has a really bad relationship with her daughter, really bad relationship with her husband, who's played by Short Round from Indiana Jones Temple of Doom, as an adult, if that's something that tickles your fancy. And the IRS agent is played by Jamie Lee Curtis, if that's someone that you like. And basically now is the part where I don't even know how to explain this. So it's a multiverse movie about an infinite number of universes and shit. And the plot is basically that her husband, the main character's husband from another universe, comes into their universe and is like, hey, you are the version of this person that we need to basically save the universe from this sort of like meaningless existential nihilism that this, evil, that like the evil character of the movie is trying to basically plague into like all the other universes. So like the villain of the movie is this like evil fucking, I don't know, Satan, whatever the fuck you want to call it, figure who can basically like control like all of space and time, control everything that happens in all of the universes and shit whenever the fuck she wants to. And there's like no rules and no morality and no moral compass to this person at all. And so basically these other characters, so like the husband from the other universe, and then the main character who's like chosen by the husband from the other universe to fight the evil nihilistic villain person to try to like restore meaning and balance and everything back to the universe, is like chosen to do that. Basically, that's the most I can say without spoiling it, but it is a fucking insane movie. It is one of the best movies I've ever seen. Like,
so it's one of the best interpretations of multiverse that you've seen.
It's like the only good one, because the multiverse shit pisses me off a lot of the time.
Eucharist been trying to get in for a minute. Let's hear it.
My question was going to be like what you meant when you said you're not religious anymore, and so you like you said you walked out not believing in God. I think that's interesting, and like I think like my first response to like what you said is I also grew up in the South, grew up religious like Connor, like not a Sunday that we weren't in church kind of thing. And I think like one of obviously the criticisms that I have now coming out of that is that a lot of typical American evangelicalism does put you in kind of an intellectual box that would lead you to think that when you arrive at these questions, or when you arrive at even some different answers, that you have rejected a foundation of the faith, right? So I think it's a real like problem in American evangelicalism that most or many evangelicals in certain sects believe that if you come to believe anything different than whatever version of 6,000 years ago the earth was created, that you have rejected the foundations of the faith. There's plenty, in fact, probably most traditional Christians have not believed that, right? So we have like all the way back to Augustine, people questioning how we interpret Genesis, whether we do it literally or not. And his answer is kind of not. And I mean, you find all sorts of examples of this in Catholicism. Like, I was just like, I've argued with a bunch of people about this recently. Hunter Avalone, I yelled at him a little bit, and oh my gosh, but like, the person who came up with Big Bang Theory was a priest. Like Mendelian genetics, he was an Augustinian friar, right? Like, so like, there are all these people who are like perfectly, scholarly, intellectual people who are perfectly willing to grapple with the realities of the world, who are convinced, like, sort of, I think, in line with what the perennialists here have been saying, that if something is true, it's true, and they don't have to fear that what they believe is compatible with that as well. So like, in terms of like Christian perennialists, like what immediately comes to mind for me, I don't know if you probably, if you grew up in an evangelical background, you probably liked C.S. Lewis, but his Abolition of Man is a little too heretical for most of our evangelical friends. But it's basically like the Christian perennialist case. He's like, look, what we see across time, across history, across culture is people who seriously think about ethics, about morality, come to some pretty consistent conclusions. Yes, there are differences.
Cross-culturally,
there's some real consistencies here, and we can lay them out, and we can defend them, and we can do it without specific reference to the special revelation of Scripture. Now, he does think that that's, capturing this truth in a really particular way. Other truths, like you said, like the resurrection of Christ, that he believes in, but he's like, no, like there's something different about what we're doing here in the modern project versus like what everybody else who's thought about this seriously before cross-culturally has found to be true, and I'm with that. I latch onto that. So yeah, I mean, I guess like I don't ever really know what to tell anybody who's like questioning, because it's everybody's like path and interaction with their past faith is different. I guess I would just say, like, I think that like they've given you some good recommendations of just like places to explore, and I would say just be willing to consider and interact with people who still identify as Christians, who are trying to do what I would consider like a rigorous intellectual Christianity as well.
Yeah. I mean, that's
and defenses for the faith and defenses for God that are willing to grapple with the sorts of things that people we grew up with find challenging.
That's something. So when I actually talked to my mom and my dad about this last night, like I sat down, I had been like nervous about it for months. I did not want to like have to come and tell them like that I was add another layer of black sheep on top of everything else already. So I sat and talked to them about it, and I had told everybody like in my community all like months before, and kind of said like at no point am I going to be like this Christian hating, I was brainwashed. Because I see people like that, like Aiko talks all the time about how like she resents her parents, and like that they brainwashed her into this like crazy cult called Christianity, and stuff like that. And so I don't think that I will ever do that. And when I say I don't believe in God, I don't believe in the Christian God. I still have trouble with like, because I spent, as soon as I like kind of like had this revelation, I spent the next like couple months doing nothing but watching videos on evolution, on like, how the earth came to be, and reading books on it and stuff like that. But I still like, I don't know how that happened. Like, yeah, sure, a bunch of asteroids.
You believe in something, is what you're saying.
That's
right?
what I'm saying. Like, how is I don't
idea.
know that I believe in something. I'm more so agnostic on it. I don't know where all those asteroids came from that created planets. I don't know. Time is probably the thing I struggle with most. I don't know where time came from. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to say, so this is actually my thing, because I try to understand things as much as possible from a scientific lens as possible, and I do the they call Sam Harris calls it woo, with like basically like the voodoo combination of like religious and spiritual concepts with the material reality. But I think that my stuff is relatively sound. So I think that if you looked at like the space-time continuum, basically the formation of the universe and the separation of matter into multiple different things, if you look at that, then time is not possible with all things collected into a singular unity. Basically, as soon as things separate, you can track time because they're moving within like different orbits and all that kind of shit of each other. So time literally can't exist within a singularity. And as far as we understand our universe, is that we were birthed from a singularity. Something was at the center of our probably dormant universe. It burst forth and formed like galaxies and planets and all that kind of stuff, and birthed time and physics and heat and death and life as we understand it today. So for me, I start from that baseline 0 of I don't know if this force is conscious or unconscious, but I know that it created the universe and that there's rules to the universe, that there's things that can be understood from moral observation, and there's things that we can interpret back into the way we conduct ourselves to live good or bad lives. So, for instance, a lot of people who are anti-theists, they're anti-theistic because of basically the exact highlight that you said. And then their resentment boils into nihilist hedonism, where all they want to do is like do heroin and fuck people, right?
I mean,
Well,
I would say I'm in nihilism right now. I see no point in anything anymore. Like it all just seems weird.
But then I root back to I root back to evolutionary advantage, because the truth is that if you do heroin every day, if you have sex with every day, if you have sex with 50 different partners every day, blah blah blah, what's going to happen to you? You're going to stop shitting because you're doing so much heroin. You're going to catch herpes because you're fucking so many people. You're going to burn out your dopamine receptors because you can no longer process the joys of life. You're not going to be able to understand, like, you're not going to have an emotional balance within your life, and you're going to die 50 years before your peers who live a more moderated
I did all
life.
that while I was a Christian. I'm a recovered heroin addict. I have to take Suboxone for like the rest of my life now. So I'm already there.
But I am saying, like, when you're a nihilist, you don't have any reason not to. There's no reason to not to pull up.
Wait, let's not encourage Tom's relapse, okay? Like, hold on.
No, I'm not. I'm asking him to observe, observe.
Well, something that
there is a fundamental force and there is order to the universe that you can absorb and bring back into yourself.
I think something that I've really liked coming into Twitch politics is understanding social constructs better, because for me, like, I'm just a human. Humans are completely different from animals. We're nowhere close. Like, that's kind of how, like, you know, I was raised, and that's the kind of the thing I've always believed in. And so, like, the things that we believe in are just those things. They weren't like things that we constructed. They weren't things that came about, you know, because we decided. Like, they're just there. And then I started going to school for what was called linguistic marketing, but it was like classes on like the way that we categorize things mostly, and the way that we react to certain words, and a lot of it was about rhetoric and crap like that. And it kind of, it gave me like different perspectives on that. And then coming into Twitch politics, and really like everybody's hammering down on like, oh, this is social construct, this is a social construct, this is a social construct. Those are the things that really now I start to have trouble with, because I now recognize more so that these things weren't meant to be, or they aren't just that way, that these are a way because we made it this way.
I would never
disagree. Yeah.
I wouldn't.
Oh, go ahead, buddy.
Hold on. I just want to say, if you're getting this from the Twitch people that are in our spaces, I would never trust those people.
I'm not trusting them. I'm just saying that I had to do more homework on these things because of those conversations.
Yeah, fair enough. Because I think when a lot of people are hammering in social construct, it's either meaningless. It has nothing to do with the conversation that's being had most of the time. It's just kind of like this.
It just means I don't like it, is normally what that means. It means I don't like it.
Well, sure. But also, I think when people are saying that, they're conflating like a descriptor for something, or like a word for something, with like the thing itself. So they're calling the descriptor a social construct, but the social construct,
it's normally a categorization,
to a thing itself.
Yeah.
So I'm only if someone's saying social construct, I'm only interested in that if they're talking about the thing itself,
right,
being a social construct, and that being relevant to a conversation somehow, not whatever the fuck the label is.
Yes.
So
I get into it with my chat about that all the time. Yes, I get into it. They'll just throw that out there, but it's a social construct. I'm like, you're not saying anything. You're not saying anything. Everything we're doing right now is socially constructed. Yes, we're talking right now. This is socially constructed. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not really saying anything worthwhile. It's not like they came up with something new. I'm teaching Locke right now, right? And this is his whole project. You don't have to agree with Locke, right? But the whole goal with doing this whole like state of nature nonsense is like, let's strip it down to the basics and let's see what was added on top. Let's see why it exists and see if we can justify its existence. It doesn't exist by nature. Let's fine, good, but like maybe it's still good and useful. Maybe we still want it. Like they're like it's an attempt to kind of head off the conversation rather than have it in an interesting way in a lot of cases.
Okay,
Let's get back to
really
the
quick.
religion part, though.
Well,
yeah.
I was gonna say,
Let's not fall victim to this ourselves.
Well, I'm gonna fall victim really quick. So
Oh, no.
basically, here's my thing: is like I think so much of this is still natural behavior. So we look at the social interactions of animals like lions and meerkats and fucking ants and shit, and we don't say that's unnatural. That's how they behave. And if you look at human beings, where even like a tribe of human beings will defer to the senior members within a tribe, and they'll have the senior members get together in order to make decisions about the communal well-being of the tribe. That for me, that would be like proto-government or proto-institutions.
Yeah.
And all we've really done is because of specialization, which I think has come under like the post-enlightenment capitalist, kind of, the way we think about the material world right now. What we've done is we've specialized a whole bunch of social roles. So it's artificial because it's made out of cement and steel and all that kind of stuff. But we don't look at beavers who build dams and call that artificial. You know what I'm saying? Like, so for me, the synthetic natural divide is actually, I don't want to say it's arbitrary, but I would say that at some point we have to understand that the synthetic is rooted in the natural, and us divorcing these concepts is not as obvious as some people pretend.
So can I ask you, are you saying that like as humans we just naturally build these things and believe in them, and that's why
there's a reason why even religions who don't have a creator god, there's a reason why there's religions and spiritual philosophy on like in the entire planet. It's because everybody's trying to figure out what the fuck is going on.
Yeah. There's also, and there is like some evidence too. I read this, like, I'll link it to you. There was like this meta-analysis I found once that showed that like if you look across cultures and stuff over time, I can't give all the exact details, but like they did kind of conclude with like a lot of like neuroscientific data and stuff. And I can't remember what the exact argument was, but I trust them because I'm a technocratic piece of shit. But they did conclude that like human beings do have this natural evolved propensity to pursue some kind of teleological belief system. And that seems to be debatably unique to us, because you can find like chimpanzees and stuff that do weird like rituals and shit. But we evolved it from somewhere, seems to be the consensus. So
I'm gonna be a huge prick. I think that living creatures or whatever are so simple, and they're so simple in their function that they never doubt purpose for like a second. Like that I think like an ant wakes up and it's like, oh, I'm a fucking ant. Time to serve my purpose. Burp-a-derp. And he just like goes out and fucking does shit.
Yeah, but that's the curse of humanity, isn't it? That we get stuck thinking about this stuff and we can start reading Camus and
that's
end
what
up
I'm
on
saying,
a rabbit hole, right?
Why it's
which goes back to this is a metaphor, but I know for some people it's literal. That goes back to the knowledge of good and evil from the forbidden fruit in Adam and Eve and fucking Genesis. Is we understand life and death, we understand good and evil, we understand these moral calculations, and we also understand that we can be wrong about them. Therefore, our stock in these ideas is higher and lower.
So over the last like 2 years, I probably like identified more as a neocon type person, but hated Trump, and Trump was like my awakening to literally everything. I felt like all of the people who I thought like were with me, we all held the moral high ground, like we were the good people. All of a sudden, they all like vote for Trump, defend literally everything he says, twist it into something that's defensible now, that's so far separated from reality. Yeah, that I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know who these people are anymore. They are not who I thought we were, and so I think any neocon would end up voting Democrat over the last couple elections as well, and that's who I. Yes, that's like the Lincoln Project sorts of people.
Like the Republican leader before Trump was Mitt Romney, and I'm pretty sure they all like disavow Mitt Romney now. I don't even think like Mitt Romney himself will say like I don't fit in with the modern Republican ethos anymore. Yeah, he's just kind of like politically homeless now.
Well, let me link this back
and
in.
He would have been more in that neocon camp.
so as I'm like separating myself from these people and like kind of realizing this stuff and getting into Twitch politics, and they're talking about stuff like gender and crap like that, I really dove deep into gender. Like that was like, it was like something that I really needed to understand, and found out that nobody on Twitch had any clue what gender was or understood it whatsoever. But it really gave me like a better understanding of language and concepts and social constructs and stuff like that. And yeah, it seems like there's so many things that like we naturally do that that other animals don't do. And I would think that like even religion and the way that we socially construct these ideas to have some sort of higher power, to have some sort of higher purpose, these things are probably innate to us in some way as well. Because even people who don't believe in God and hate that sort of stuff start coming up with crystals and, you know, oh, the moon has this much of a shadow on it this week and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, sure.
Liberalism. Let's throw liberalism in there.
Oh, that's, I love liberalism though. Yeah.
Like every atheist I know that's not a socialist, I swear to fuck, their entire moral system is just, well, are all adults consenting to this activity? Then it's okay now. And it's like I know so many people like this, you know?
Consensually.
Like, yeah, I know so many people like this where they just take like they're going to like political philosophies now, where they're just taking principles that you apply to policy and they're extrapolating it to the interpersonal. This is why like I stopped identifying as a liberal, because I just found that super fucking weird to take like liberalism and take it out of like policy and into like, oh, now my own personal life is just based off of let everyone do whatever they want as long as it's not hurting me. Like,
isn't this like a totally Nietzschean thing though, where he's like, you know, they cry that like God is dead and they think that they've like won something, but really it should be like a lament.
Yeah.
And I think I think one of the things,
time is not yet. They don't get it. They're not.
Well,
not ready
and that's what I was thinking. Is so I don't even know if Nietzsche spoke about this, but basically what's happened is all of that like religious fervor and religious tribalism and impetus and all that kind of stuff, it's all been cast onto politics. So now politics is the new tribal religion. And even if they're like, oh, I don't believe in God, I don't care about spirituality, I don't care about morality outside of like secular society, blah blah blah, they still take that zeal, they still take that energy that like religious folks take to sing on Sundays, and they put it into fucking tweets.
I disagree. I really identify with Enlightenment values now. I think that those things are great, and you call it liberalism. I think Enlightenment values are like a great starting point in believing in not just equality, but also individualism and allowing people to do what they want as long as it doesn't affect others. Now, here's the catch. If it transforms the society that you live in into something else, and that's not something that you want, that's still something that has a negative outcome that you would still fight against it, regardless of whether or not you're allowing people to do what they've consented to do, right?
Sure, but what I was getting at when I was talking about liberalism, I wasn't saying it's like bad to be a liberal or anything. I was just saying that or that Enlightenment values.
You're saying you don't. It shouldn't encompass everything. It shouldn't be where like your starting point.
No. What I was just pointing out that just something I've noticed in my own life from people who identify as like liberal or whatever is they're taking things that traditionally like what a liberal is traditionally is someone who applies Enlightenment principles to like policies in a framework of rights around like freedom of speech and freedom of association and equality under the law and all this stuff. And what I was just saying is because
it's not axiomatic is what you're saying.
Well, what I'm saying is enacting a specific type of policy doesn't necessarily mean that you believe in a certain type of individual behavior. So for example, if I'm going to, so here's like an old school kind of liberal idea is like decriminalizing homosexuality, right? So when homosexuality was decriminalized, nobody was arguing that like it's good to be gay. It's good to have gay sex or get married as a gay man. This was never like the argument before. The argument was always like, well, maybe I'm not gay and I don't, I don't view this as moral or immoral. Therefore, we shouldn't criminalize it because my baseline assumption is that if we're going to criminalize certain behavior or whatever, the state has the burden of proof because that's the basis of a free society.
Oh yeah. This is actually really funny. I'm going to be homophobic for a second. So,
well, real quick, hold on. I just want to ask a clarifying question. Are you saying that we just should separate our moral values from our political values? Is that your overall?
Or we should recognize that we can have more in there.
Yeah, yeah. So what I was trying to, I'll let you speak, Connor. I want to answer that. So this is where it gets a little tricky because like your morals are always going to influence your politics. But at the same time, a specific policy and what the policy might be representing doesn't necessarily mean that you support the individual behavior that it encourages. So like, I don't believe that like gay sex is good. I think it's like just a thing that exists.
It's neutral. Yeah.
It's neutral or whatever. Yeah. It's just a thing that exists. It's like, it doesn't have any moral character to it necessarily. Right. But I don't see a reason to make that illegal.
Yeah.
You know, and let's extrapolate to stuff I actually think is bad. Like cheating on your partner. Let's say like an 18-year-old cheats on their girlfriend. That's morally like repugnant to me, right? Because you violated like this mutual trust that you both built with each other, blah, 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 blah. But I don't think that should be illegal because because the entire point of a free society to me is that people need to have the opportunity to learn and to extrapolate and to think through their bullshit because we're all flawed and fallible, yada, 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 right? But what I see some people doing isn't like that, isn't thinking about it like that. What I see some people that I've known who identify as liberal doing is they're like, yeah, gay sex is awesome or something like that. Or like, you know, this should be legal because I think it's good to do it. So I know a lot of people who are fucking potheads. Their argument for legalizing
Ninja, I
weed
want to talk
is,
too, you fucking autist. Let's
go.
go.
Sorry. I will in a sec. Just an example. There are a lot of people I know who are potheads who are like, I want weed to be legal because I think it's fucking awesome to smoke weed. And it's like, no, that's not the argument that you should use. That's what I mean by taking like things that should be legal and interpreting that as things that we should do, period. That's all I mean. Because I don't think you should smoke weed, but I still think it should be legal. I was just highlighting that.
Tiberius wants to jump in, so I'm going to send him an
Tiberius
invite.
is raging at you, layman. So okay, you're going to get some.
You can do that, but it's my turn for an autist rant. So
and I want an autist rant too.
Okay, so my autist rant is that like, so for instance, like a lot of people are kind of like a lot of lefties or whatever. They go along with me, they follow me, they like my moral principles, they like all that kind of stuff until I like opine on something where I think that something is negative, but I don't think it should be illegal. So for instance, like today on Twitter or whatever, I'm getting like a commercial for like 2 male homosexual vampires like making out and biting each other on my fucking advertisements. And I'm like, are there
those are targeted based on things that you search, right?
Apparently. So apparently I'm into gay vampires. So anyway, so I was like, are there enough gay men in like the United States in order to support a fucking AMC drama about 2 male homosexual vampires biting each other and eating each other and making out and shit? And I'm just thinking to myself, it's like, I'm tolerant of this because I don't think it should be criminal. And on top of that, I'm pretty cool with gay people doing whatever they want to do. But at the same time, I have an instinct that if you were promoting hedonism, nihilism, promiscuity, doing hard drugs, having lots of homosexual sex, which by the way, somebody was trying to yell at me for saying that promiscuity and male homosexual sex aren't correlative, and I think they're fucking lunatics. I literally went to a gay bar. Maybe that's why I got the vampire ad. So I went to a gay bar with a friend, and literally like the bartender's like offering to blow me, and I've been there for like 60 fucking seconds. You can't tell me that promiscuity and male homosexuality isn't at least somewhat correlated. And I think it's okay to say, hey, bro, if you blow 30 dudes a day, you're probably going to get herpes and have shitty relationships. Now, you should be legal to do so, but I think it's bad.
Yeah. So Before Tiberius gets it and rages at Layman, I just wanted to say I mean I'm sympathetic too to like even as a Christian, like I'm sympathetic to the like the love of Enlightenment values, right? Like I'm doing stuff on John Stuart Mill right now, and there's a lot to love about it. And one of the things that I do love about it, going back to my point earlier about like the intellectual deficiency of the kind of religious world that we maybe grew up in, is that I think the advantage of a person like John Stuart Mill and the advantage of the kind of like intellectual believers that I look up to is that they're both confident that they're right, and if you let the ideas out, they'll win, right? So like John Stuart Mill is not like advocating for censoring religious opinion. He thinks if we have a properly free society, religious opinion is going to go away eventually because it's going to be proven wrong. In the same way, I know lots of believers who are perfectly confident engaging with really, really heavy stuff on a really high intellectual level because they're confident that they're right. And they don't, they're willing to go toe to toe with these people because they think they can defend their views. They think they have like the historical and the biblical and the theological and philosophical knowledge to back up the things that they believe.
Yeah,
and
going
so
back to that,
a virtue in both cases, right? For the John Stuart Mill and for the religious believer both, you have to be willing to engage on that level in a way that a lot of like evangelicals who teach you, if you even think about Darwinism, you're throwing out the faith, aren't, right? I think that's
let's let Tiberius jump in real quick.
I appreciate
yell at Layman,
that.
Please.
I will yell at Layman in just a second here, but number one, thank you for letting me on because I was about to have a stroke. Layman, Mia, and you apparently need to have a bit of a chat.
Why? What did I say?
Okay, so here's the thing: there are a lot of atheists who are at least like moderate left or right, openly right wing, but they do fall in these weird categories. So some of them are very much what you described, and it's just like, well, if I don't want to bastardize what you said, but basically the whole like live and let live policy. But there are those that are like moral objectivists, and it's really weird because you don't usually find that out of the atheist community. I'm one of them, right? So it's one of those deals where I'm like, all right, apparently I need to get in on this because one, while I'm right wing, I'm not like militantly atheist, but I'm definitely like the person that's like, there is no God. Stop telling me that shit. Like it's very, very, very fucking obvious that there isn't one. And I know I'm gonna make Ukerist stroke. but I am very adamant in that regard, and while I'm no longer like the militant atheist that's just like we must destroy the religion, I actually think that religion is incredibly fucking important. Is that there is degrees where I'm like, you know what, religion has a horrific issue with dealing with literalism and particularly explaining the hows. It's great for the whys, although I think some of these things are outdated. But the hows of things happen, it's absolutely getting its ass kicked on. And it's going to continue to until it adapts.
But scientism is also cringe.
Yes. So the best way that I described this, I just talked to our good friend Osiris yesterday, was that like religion is really good with being philosophical and answering the whys, right? Because you can say that you are born and I can explain how, but is there an actual why to it? Do you actually have any kind of given purpose? Religion's really good at that. Philosophy's really good at that. Science does not give a fuck. It will explain exactly the process, but does science actually explain to you why life exists at all? No, it doesn't.
Yeah, because you could be religious and you could concede like every scientific fact, right, under certain religious circumstances, unless you are like one of these like, evangelical like dipshit literalist people, right? But you could say like, oh yeah, I accept every scientific fact. God just is the ultimate source for all of those scientific facts that occur within the natural world, right?
There's this like really cheesy analogy that John Lennox likes to use. He's a mathematician at Oxford, and he does all these debates with atheists and stuff. So I like it. He's a fun guy, but he has this analogy that I really like.
Guy, right?
And so he says that like, you the kind of person like what you've described is perfectly willing to accept anything you can tell them about the world. But when you say that you've disproved the existence of God by looking around at the natural world, it's like taking apart an Abrams tank and saying you've disproved the engineering team that designed it and then the team that built it. It's nonsense, right? Looking at the internal mechanisms tells us nothing about origins and ultimate purpose and all these other things. Now, if you believe in what he calls and other people call a God of the gaps, like if you believe that like, well, the reason the Abrams tank fires is because God directly makes it happen, well, then that's, your belief is going to be shaken pretty easily once you find out some basic facts of combustion, right? So as long as you can avoid that, there's a lot of openness to alternatives.
And I want to clarify some stuff to ease the tension a bit. So when I was talking about my experience, when I was talking about my when I was talking about atheists before, I wasn't trying to say that every atheist is like that. I was just the only point I was trying to make was to just say that a lot of atheists that I know personally, just in my own life, when they leave religion, or if they just never grew up religious to begin with, there is like some foundational, like, I don't know what the right word is. I'll call it teleological, because I don't know what other word to use. Teleological worldview that does serve that same natural function that people have to pursue teleological, spiritual, what you could call like religious beliefs. Yeah. It just might not necessarily be Christianity or Islam or any of the established like traditional religions that you would come to expect. So when you said, yeah, go on, Connor.
Well, I was just going to say the way that you said liberalism ended up being like the foundational moral system through which like atheists or agnostics like subscribe to. Dude,
that was one example.
But I'm saying like that's what I did, because I was like, oh, I'm leaving the religion of my parents. I'm so fucking smart. I'm so cool. I know what, I'm rejecting the faith. I'm gonna go do my own thing, get tattoos and, have premarital sex and blah, blah, blah. And what I thought was I was escaping the moral foundations that they had laid out for me, but all that really happened
escaping the moral foundations.
All I did was escape into the moral foundations of the broader society, which is liberalism, hedonism, nihilism, consumerism, capitalism, all that kind of stuff. So I was subconsciously primed to participate in all of these subcultures that I didn't even understand. And so one of the things that I really liked about what Jordan Peterson said way back in the day, back when he was still based, was you don't get to pick whether or not you die. You just get to pick which hill you get to die on.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things where I kind of realized that like ideology does not exist in some like abstract vacuum. In order to exist in this world, you do have to pick some kind of system, including no system, which is a vote to default to the systems around you.
Yes. Yeah. And going back to something Tiberius said too about like objective morality and stuff, there are a lot of atheists who, when they either leave religion or didn't grow up with religion, do go to some objective like moral view. And that's kind of what I was getting at with the when I brought up the example of consent. So a lot of libertarians that I know who are atheists, their objective moral framework does revolve around that like contract of consent. Yeah. So as long as there is consent between there's like mutual consent between adult parties, there is like no action that is wrong. So the objective morality, the how they would say the is-ought gap is bridged, is based off of consensual mutual actions between other individuals. So that's why they support like free markets, for example, right? Because they think that, you consent to your job, the employer consents to pay you, you consent to the wage you get by virtue that you are in that job. If you want to fucking shoot up heroin or whatever, and what you're, even if you fucking kill yourself doing so, you consented, so it's fine, right? Which is why I'm not a libertarian, because I think that's fucking crazy. But
so there's
just an example of like some kind of objectivist moral view that people go to.
There's overlap with there's this really thick book I've got on my shelf behind me that I'll go ahead and admit I've not totally finished, but Charles Taylor wrote a book called A Secular Age. It's really popular, but he has a couple other books on a similar theme, one called like The Ethics of Authenticity. But basically Secular Age is like this tome of intellectual history that's tracking like what actually happens with the Nietzschean death of God and what gets left behind. And there's this kind of period of what do we do? There's a period of what he's calling an ethic of authenticity that values in a kind of like literal, like capital R romantic sense, like the romantic poets, like a self-actualization. I get to do what I want, but then that kind of butts up against the dam of some like latent moralisms, like you were talking about, Layman. Like nobody's defending for a time some of these policies on the basis of like this is a good thing. It's maybe we should have the freedom, maybe we shouldn't criminalize these things. But then that dam kind of breaks when you get things like the sexual revolution that allow you to fully embrace that no, like this is part of my self-actualization to do these things that were formerly kept back by this moralistic dam, and now no, this is just like part of my life. I enjoy it and I ought to be able to do it, and that's my most authentic self, as long as it's all between.
But dude, this is like what I find so cringe about like all these conversations, not that these conversations shouldn't be had and that like it's important to flesh these things out, but like a lot of this shit is like so old. Like it's so fucking old. Like if you go back to like fucking the dialogues of Socrates and fucking Plato and Xenophon and all that kind of shit.
They're all talking about
there was still shame. There was still strong shame involved here, right? So there's a totally different cultural way of interacting with it where like so like especially like with Socrates or like with ancient Greek society, like you're going through a period where it's kind of less socially acceptable to have a little boy, but if you do like if the boy kind of goes through puberty and you guys are still hanging out, then something weird's going on, especially in Athens. Sparta was different because Sparta's like, well, you're away for a couple years at a time on a military venture, of course you're going to be banging dudes, but like but it wasn't like embraced in the same way that we do now.
Dude, I don't know how you landed on homosexuality. What I was talking about was that for instance, there was a conversation about like hedonism where Socrates went to go visit an old hedonist who was making sacrifices to the gods. And he was like, wait, I thought you didn't even believe in the gods. Why are you making sacrifices? And the hedonist is like, well, I'm all about maximizing pleasure and minimizing pain. So these sacrifices and these rituals as I'm dying or as I'm in old age, they basically fall in line with my moral framework. And I hope the gods, if they exist, are understanding of my worldview. And also the other thing was, I think even the hedonist in that conversation, he decried younger hedonists who believed that like hedonism was staying up for 36 hours straight, snorting Adderall and playing video games in the Greek equivalent, because he's like, that's not hedonism. Because what you're doing is you're maximizing your pleasure, but because you're maximizing your pleasure, you're also going to pay a corresponding amount of pain. So hedonism is more about actually finding the wavelength between pleasure and pain to minimize your pain and maximize your pleasure, which like, I don't respect hedonism, particularly when it comes to our modern nihilist, like Adderall snorting fucking hedonism. But to me, I was like, oh my God, I heard a steelman representation of this ideology I normally shit on that actually is understandable.
Yeah, well, so you get this too in the Gorgias. Socrates is arguing with sophists, and they're talking about basically, maximizing pleasure. And one of the analogies that Socrates uses in the argument is like, okay, who's actually happy and experiencing the kind of satisfaction that we're all aiming at? Is it the person who has like leaky wine jars that he's constantly having to like refill and refill and refill to make sure he doesn't run out? Or is it the person who has perfectly intact wine jars that he has the wine when he wants it and it's just there and there's no struggle to keep it satisfied? And so the analogy is like, if you have some control and reign over your appetites, you're ultimately more satisfied, even on a hedonistic sense, than somebody who's just doing the Adderall 36-hour Modern Warfare binges. Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Although
never
Modern Warfare 2 came out a day or two ago, so yeah.
So you're about to dip.
Ragnarok Odin's son. You're saying we're getting some fucking history wrong. You better start fucking typing, motherfucker. Start typing.
Just out of curiosity, do you think the proclivity to hedonism largely is just the fact that there is like, whether you would call it like a social, spiritual, or a combination thereof, a hole for people that we just innately have that like if we don't feel it, we just self-destruct.
I agree.
I view America as a pagan society.
I think that I think that in the absence of any kind of like overarching like teleological worldview, people are just going to default to their natural drives. And so I think that's where a lot of hedonism, the steelman of hedonism, maximizing pleasure in order to minimize pain, comes from, because that's just like your natural like biological response to everything, right? It's like, I want to feel good and I don't want to feel bad. So like, I think that's what I think. Yeah. I think in the absence of like an ordered teleological worldview, people are just going to default to whatever their natural drives tell them to. Yeah. And they'll just rationalize it from there through a variety of ways, philosophies and shit.
I love you, Tom.
Okay, just real quick follow up on that one. I always get the arguments of us like, well, all the people with the college degrees believe this, or all the smart people believe this kind of shit. Is it actually the reality that people who are intelligent are better at just convincing themselves that they're right more than it is that they are to be right?
Oh yeah, I think so.
Wait, no,
if I'm understanding you correctly, if I'm interpreting that correctly, you're saying that what you're questioning
people
is
who think they're right. What the fuck are you talking about?
Oh, okay, I see. You're okay. I'm gonna rephrase it to you. Just tell me if this is what you're asking. Are you asking if people who are more educated are not actually, more correct by virtue that they're smarter or whatever, but they're just more cognitively able to rationalize the same prejudices that dumb people have too?
More or less, yeah. Like my big thing is like people are like, hey, why don't you believe in this? or why do you think that these people are wrong? Because they're supposed to be the smart people or the educated or what have you. And I'm like, I firmly believe the more intelligent you are, the better that you are at actually just internalizing whatever you believe and making it logically and systematically make sense.
I don't think you're better at it, or sorry, I don't think that you do it more, but I think that you just have more skills that allow you to do it in a convincing way. Does that make sense? Or an influential way. Yeah. But I don't think that you're any more prone to confirmation bias just because you're more intelligent. At least I'm not. If someone showed me evidence to the contrary, I'd accept that.
Okay, that's an interesting one. Okay, yeah, that's an interesting one because like the reason why this conversation gets brought up is that everyone talks about like IQ scores and like religiosity, and like every time that I get into that, like everyone has different data. But the weird part is that the data that I had was correct, is that the average person is religious, but both the extremely stupid and the extremely smart actually tend to being irreligious, which is really, really interesting. Now, granted, if Ukerist has anything, like he probably would.
I have a lot. I've read into that topic a lot too. Yeah, it seems like it's really, really hard to tie religion to intelligence because I've seen data like, and you have to break it down by people's motivations towards religion because religion is such a huge category. There's a lot that you have to break down in that. So that's why it bugs the shit out of me when people cite like polling data on like this is what Christians believe or this is how Christians act. And it's like, well, hold on, like Christian is a very broad category. And the way that most like psychologists and psychiatrists and shit break that down is by very specific, particular motivations. So there's like intrinsic religiosity and extrinsic religiosity are like the two big ones you can find in like a lot of psych literature. And intrinsic religiosity basically just means that like your primary psychological motivations are to fulfill whatever religion you hold in and of itself. Usually they sample like Christians, but you can find like Islamists and, you know,
Ninja,
Hindus
I don't have time for you to explain both intrinsic and extrinsic religiosity. Fucking TLDR that shit. Let's go.
Anyway, my point is you have to break it down.
Being feisty. Yeah, I get you.
I'm just being feisty because I have limited time. I'm supposed to go shoot episodes, so I'm probably gonna hang out for another half hour or so. But but basically what I was gonna say is if there was a meeting of the minds like this, what I would be hoping, because I think Ukerist is probably the most foundationally religious out of all of us. Tomfoolery's exploring. Layman and I are both perennialists, and then Ty's like the atheist. What I would say is we're still going through the growing pains of like the Nietzschean death of God, where religious people are still dogmatically holding on to religion. Atheist people are flossing on the corpse of God. And there's a whole bunch of like lost souls in between. And if I was to like hypothetically advance this society like 500 years, what I would want to see is like you could still tolerate religious dogmatism, but most religious people would have evolved in order to take in religion, not necessarily with like a pinch of salt. Like they could still believe everything they wanted to believe, but they would have meshed that into the real world through something like perennialism. And then the atheist people, because religion was more healthy for the broader society because it had been meshed into perennialism or, you know, some kind of combination with science, then the atheists could chill out and they wouldn't be flossing on the corpse of God. And they might understand that there's some utility to religion that helps religious people leave or live better lives than even some atheists do. And that's where I would want to see society 500 or 1,000 years from now, not with Islam and Christianity and Judaism thrown in the bin, but with them kind of updated into like a modern understanding of the world.
I incredibly agree with this or incredibly disagree with this. So I'm going to throw my. I'm serious. I'm going to
shit. You're one of the guys flossing on the corpse of God.
Well, here's right. So anyway, here let me put out where I expect this is going to go, and then you can tell me if we agree or disagree. I don't think that particularly Judaism and Christianity are going to make it the next 100 years without a massive reformation. But will that reformation be like Christianity 3.0 or 4.0, depending on like what your interpretation is, or is it going to meld in with other religions? And key point is that one of the things I think that it's absolutely probably prone to do is that it's going to pick up an Eastern tenet or two. As an example, you have Theravada Buddhism, which is far more philosophic than it is an actual religion versus Mahayana. And I expect that you're going to see, if Christianity actually reformats itself in a way that I think is going to be a lot more palatable to people, it's going to be a lot more reflective in the way that Christian theologians were back in the 17 and 1600s, to where they're like, the best way to understand God and understand the universe is to understand the world. And they believe that like the answering the questions that they can't answer through like a scientific method would be answered through a philosophic method or like a theocratic method. I think that's where this religion should go. I don't guarantee that it will.
Yeah. You're saying should, and I just want to rebut really quickly. Where it's going to go is a bunch of fucking trad Catholics from fucking Central and South America are going to immigrate back to the United States. Evangelicals are going to use that to reform like a Christian alliance, and they're going to try to create a Christian nationalist theocracy based off of dogmatism in order to seize power inside the United States. So that is infinitely more likely than like people being like, oh, we're just going to smoke pot, bro, and we're going to combine Christianity with some like better understanding of the universe, bro.
Speaking of confirmation bias.
Well,
yeah, that shit ain't going to happen.
Can I say what I actually think is going to happen?
Go for it.
In the near future. So what I think is going to happen is as our society, because I know so here's what I know. Religiosity is increasing globally, but it's decreasing in the Western world.
Yeah.
Now, by decreasing in the Western world, I'm specifically just talking about Christianity. So this is something really interesting that was released in Canada. I can only speak to Canada. In our last census, was Christianity between like 2021 and 2011 declined by like 10%. And there's far more people who are religiously unaffiliated, but religious minorities are growing. And that's probably, in large part, I would attribute that to the fact that we've had like a fuck ton more immigration recently. And I feel like if societies go in a multicultural direction, given the fact that the non-Western world is becoming far more religious, then bringing that into the Western world, we're probably not going to see the sort of, American evangelical, whatever the fuck. That's probably going to die for sure. But what we are probably going to see in the future is a new kind of renaissance of religions where we kind of figure out like, okay, because the base of multicultural society is like you have people of different cultures, but they still have to get along within some framework of values. And you can only practice your culture and is like you're actually able to, assimilate to that to some degree. So I think we're going to see that. We're going to see something new. In the next, like Connor said, 500 years or so, that is closer to what Connor said. And something I also know, based off of Pew Research data, is more and more Christians are adapting to things like, say, like evolution, for example. I'm pretty sure even in the United States, a majority of Christians, not a huge majority, but a slim majority, do accept the theory of evolution, do accept evolution, and they make it compatible with their Christianity somehow, whether it's like some fucking what's the word fucking where God like planned evolution and he
intelligent design,
whether it's like some intelligent design thing or evolution and Darwinism just happened by itself and God just ding hit the first domino key but just didn't intervene otherwise. I think most Christians are starting to accept that. And they do accept that today in at least North America.
I was about to say in Canada.
I think it is updated. Go on.
I don't think we can make it to the end of the century without seeing a massive overhaul. But I think one or two things happens. Either one, what I largely outlined. If Christianity largely goes down the route that Connor is, I think that's going to look a lot more like Judaism in this regard. It's going to be really hemmed in to people that are highly zealous when it comes to this particular belief, but it's going to get subsumed by something else. If you're talking about something that's a lot more traditional, I'm going to actually say it. Islam's going to fucking take it over. If it's not that, I'm looking actually like progressive wokeism, because in every I'm serious. In every single regard, while it is not technically a religion, is that it behaves like a reformed version of Protestantism. It's just hyper guilty.
There's
you mean like it has that
books about this?
What?
I've got two people talking.
Yeah, I'm gonna shut up.
I mean, I think they're probably gonna, once evolution is like actually taught in schools, like mandatorily, or you can't stop it from being taught in schools. I think, to me, I think religion is just gonna die off. But I don't know.
I totally disagree.
No, because like the Catholic Church already is like perfectly fine with evolution,
But
in
I
some
think
form or not.
I think
Right?
they
And
changed
so, like,
too
what
much.
I think what's
though.
going to change more than the actual teachings of any particular Christian sect is more of these people who are religiously homeless but still want to be spiritual and still might want to cling to Christian faith are going to adopt either Orthodoxy or Catholicism in some form. I don't think those are going anywhere in the next 100 years. Obviously,
I'd also like to say that
he's talking about the evangelical church, though. I like no offense, Tom, but I think the reason why you think that the teaching of evolution is going to have a larger impact than maybe the rest of us is because I was raised Catholic and I was raised by like liberal parents who just happened to be conservative in a lot of ways. And so evolution was always a part of my worldview. And it still wasn't viewed as incongruent with Christianity because we didn't have a literalist interpretation for every verse of the Bible. So for instance, like 40 days and 40 nights or 40 years or something like that, literally I was told when I was 5 that whenever you see 40 days and 40 nights, that doesn't mean literally 40 days and 40 nights. That just means a long time. And there's all sorts of like post hoc translations that you can do about like some stories making them literal, some stories making them not literal, or certain words like strikos or whatever. The meek shall inherit the earth.
But this
There's
is part
like
of my
an updated
problem.
interpretation for discipline.
Yeah, that's part of my problem, though. When I was talking to my dad about this last night, I was like, it just seems like there was Christianity 100 years ago, and we have something completely different. Where like every time we find out we're wrong about something, we're just like, oh, okay, like that's fine. We'll just integrate that now. Oh, the Earth is round. Okay, fine. Well, that's fine. Oh, evolution is real. All right, that we'll just mix that in now too, until it's a completely different religion.
Yeah. Something I want
a different religion than evangelicalism 100 years ago, for sure, but it's not a different religion necessarily than the Christianity.
It's not. So something I want to say is that this very, I do think this is a very like American specific like version of Christianity. This creationist shit, like this is a very modern invention. Like this fundamentalist kind of like Protestant movement and shit. This is a very like modern movement.
But you're picking and choosing what's a metaphor based on what's convenient.
I'm not picking and I didn't.
Not you. I'm saying people are doing that. Like that's what they're doing in order to do that.
What I'm saying is that kind of ultra literalism, that Genesis is literally real shit and stuff like that, is a very modern idea. Now there are a lot of church fathers and stuff in the past, like Athanasius, and who was, I think, Augustine too. Yeah. Like a lot of very, very well-respected theologians do believe that it is not literal, it is figurative, and what Genesis is figurative, and will make very, very robust, intellectually interesting arguments for why that is. I'm pretty sure, as either Connor or Ukerist or both of you said, the Catholic Church accepts evolution. It seems like it's not incompatible with at least some very firmly established sects of Christianity. And it seems like most people in the US and in Canada, because we teach evolution, because we have something that you will never have, that Canada has, we have public religious schools, Catholic schools in Canada. And these places teach evolution. So like people have been able to make this stuff compatible with their Christianity in recent times fairly easily as they've grown into it. I think it's just this evangelical Protestant shit that is very, very unique to North America that is eventually going to die.
Before I lose it, Tom, like I seriously invite you to go watch like the Jordan Peterson biblical series or whatever, because he can take a lot of shit that is not like I rejected it wholesale as a young man because I was like, the Tower of Babel, why is God fucking over humanity by creating different languages? This doesn't make sense. Or the Adam and Eve story, like why the fuck are I don't even know where to go with the fact that all of humanity is descended from incest, okay? So basically like, but what he did...
Wait, isn't that true regardless? Never mind. Right.
I mean, probably. I don't know how proto-humans work. But basically the idea though, being that there's a core of the idea that even if you're an atheist or an agnostic or a religious person, here's the undercurrent of the message. So for instance, the Tower of Babel, the reason why humanity was punished was because they were trying to rival God's majesty. Now, you can say that's fucking cringe or whatever, but I actually think that's something to be said for what humans are capable of doing is infinitesimally small compared to what the natural world is capable of achieving. And I think that's a lesson that scientism folks should keep in mind. And then same thing for final point. Knowledge of good and evil. We were talking about like the moral calculuses of animals and humans. The knowledge of good and evil is what makes humanity a little bit different, is the fact that we have some level of self-awareness that allows us to calculate like mortality and death and morality and all that kind of stuff.
Metacognition.
So, so these things are all relevant even to atheists and agnostics.
I've heard Jordan Peterson's stuff on it. I think it's full on cope. I think I think if God's going to give us his word, this is what I want to give to you. It's going to be as direct and as like strictly interpreted as possible, unless it says this is a parable or this is a metaphor or something like that. Then you know. But if otherwise, like why the hell would I believe Adam and Eve aren't real? I should believe it.
What if it's Jews doing mushrooms in the desert, tripping balls, and coming out with moral messages in order to make sure that Judaism and fucking their forebears do well?
Then they should have put that in there. And if they didn't, then they're screwing around a little bit too much, and I shouldn't believe in it.
You have a very literalist interpretation of history.
Yes.
Okay, number one,
that's a modern concept. A literal interpretation of history, separating emotion and fact, is something that's only happened in the past 200 years. Most people viewed the world through both the lens of emotion and intellectualism. They did not divorce these two concepts.
And people have to do that too, even if they think they're not. Like, it's impossible to not.
Like as a matter of fact, I would say it's cope to pretend that you can be intellectual and not emotional at the same time.
Okay, three things. First of all,
that's why I cry so much.
Oh, God damn it, you shut up.
I do want to say I want Tiberius to go just real quick, just for Tiberius is gonna hate me, but I do want to eventually, before Layman and Counterpoints have to go, I do want to get into the drama. So we're gonna stick to this for about 5 more minutes.
All right. Fair enough.
Okay, then I have one more thing to say after.
I'm not talking about the drama.
Let me fire this off real quick. Number one is that this kind of is really indicative in that one of the biggest things that we have changed is what you guys are talking about, because language in every aspect is the use of metaphor. We are never talking about something in the absolute. We are usually like referencing something. And so, like, you guys are right. And the fact of what Tom's doing is definitely a modern creation. However, literally, I can meld what Tom said and what Connor said, and I feel the exact same way about all of it. Is that, number one, it probably was a bunch of dudes who were on shrooms, or like literally more likely, take them at their word. They were fasting in the desert for days at a time. They literally got fucking cuckoo, came back in, literally with probably what we would call heat stroke, and had all these fucking revelations, right? I get how that happens. But when it comes down to it is, if you were going to take it literally and go with what the Tom's approach is like, God actually said this shit and had people write it into books, God is one messy motherfucker. Like, holy crap, dude. You are really goddamn incoherent.
Well, I think a more charitable way to frame that, while I still agree with it, is human beings are messy motherfuckers. Like, it was the guys tripping on shrooms and were spoken to by God that were writing that shit.
Right.
Not God himself,
And this is one of the primary reasons that I'm actually like full tilt atheist, is that I fervently believe like we've made up 90% of the shit. It's useful that we made up all of this shit, but when it comes down to it, like fucking magical sky daddy in the sky with a beard or whatever the fuck he may look like, it's very good metaphor.
Just read it. That's not what. What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
I'm fucking
getting gangbanged time. Getting gangbanged.
I was nodding until the Sky Daddy stuff.
I'm memeing a little bit here.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm memeing here a bit.
Can you shut up so I can recommend a book? Is that
before you do that? Just finishing off this thought, right? Okay. No matter what the various interpretation, even if I steel man like the arguments of God, it really falls flat on its face for me. Particularly in the regard that if you think that God actively has an active hand in the human development, Jesus, holy fuck, God literally has no morality to him. Like, holy crap! Have you seen him in history?
This is such straw man. This is such fucking cope. But
no,
Ukerist, you go. I'll go after Ukerist recommends this book.
So I just wanted to like piggyback on what Connor was saying about the uniqueness of like American, especially evangelical Christianity. There's a book, get it from LibGen, don't buy it off Amazon, screw Jeff Bezos. There's a book by a guy named Mark Knoll, who I think is an Anglican, but it's called The Scandal of the Evangelical Mind. And the first line of the book is that the scandal of the evangelical mind is that there isn't one. And it's basically like a philosophical and intellectual history of like how unique American evangelicalism is in like the history of even just like Western Christianity, and how it's like an aberration from the intellectual tradition that really like backbones Christianity, and how that happens, how it gets wedded with like Republican politics and all these other things that kind of take it on its own weird rabbit hole that's not like consistent often with the rest of Christianity. Super good book, really well researched, and I think just like serves to like maybe highlight some of the things that it sounds like you might be struggling with, Tom, coming from a similar background, right? Like there are things that were like ways that we're taught to read the Bible, ways that we're taught like this is what you need to think about it, and if you're challenging this, then like you're like either you're wrong or the Bible's wrong. Those are the only two options. I think like that's like a good introduction to that maybe there's more out here beyond the past like couple hundred years of American evangelicalism that's available to us. So
I want to
recommend books. Go.
Wait, you want to what?
Fight me,
Connor. I was just saying when I go, I also want to recommend books, but you can say what you were going to say.
Yeah. So I don't even want to argue this, because for me it's just like so fucking self-evidently true. I would rather you just think about this. So earlier in the conversation, I define God as like, okay, so there's a Big Bang, there's the void of space, the universe kicks into existence, everything separates out in different stuff, organizes into matter, and not only that, there is order, some level of order to that matter. Oceans form, the water cycles occur, we get the proto nutrients that are required for life. Electricity and the proto-nutrients and the water all mixed together, and abiogenesis forms the first cell, and then that cell becomes multi-celled organisms, and then those evolve until eventually we're here having this conversation. So to say so for instance, what that tells me is that there's a fundamental creative force within the universe. There's a certain level of order, whether you're talking about thermodynamics or gravity or human morality. There's a certain level of rules that can be observed over time. And on top of that, the more complex you become as a creature, the more in tune you are to review these rules and see how these rules affect you. From as simple as like eating shellfish to basically whether or not you should rape your neighbor's wife. There's a reason why the things that were picked out in the Old and New Testament as moral codices for human behavior were selected. And there's a reason why we abide by a majority of them today. And when people don't abide by them, whether we're secular or religious, we're fucking horrified by them not abiding by these moral codes. And so for you to say, it's all arbitrary, stop thinking you're talking to Sky Daddy, fuck you and your fasting, and fuck you and your mushroom trips. No, I think these people, they fasted, they did mushrooms, they made moral observations about the universe. Some of them were wrong and some of them were right. But what was birthed out of them was human conduct that on the whole over time has intergenerationally improved human interaction to the point that we don't even need to worry about rape and murder half as much as we used to. And so that's where for me, I'm not completely dismissive of science. I'm dismissive of scientism. Mm-hmm. I would ask you to be dismissive of religious dogma and all of the horrors of the church of the past, but I don't want you to be dismissive of the spiritual instinct to observe reality and try to derive moral purpose from your observation.
That last line was literally half of my rebuttal to you, which is hilarious. Because
that sounds like literal cope, Ty. That sounds like complete.
Go ahead. I want Layman to get his last word in. Go ahead, Tiberius.
You can do your drama. So all I'll say is that, or to the rebuttal of that is, I agree with particularly the last segment there regarding like we are getting better at like managing our behaviors, even though we're in a period of chaos right now. When it comes to the way that I think that people like metabolize or internalize God, quote unquote, this figure, this creation, is that almost every human, or pretty much all of them, recognize that the universe in whatever form that they see it in is infinitesimally large to a degree that they can never understand. There is a grandeur there is a grandeur that every human recognizes that they are part of, but they will never fully grasp. And God's kind of the placeholder for that, is that they openly are like, wow, this is really fucking cool. I'm part of this whole experience, whatever. But they don't know how to actually put the words, and more particularly the concepts, into fathoming how big the universe is, but also what that means. And because of that, they put God in as the placeholder, to where I am part of something. That's great. You know, I have a relationship with God, but if I'm going to be, instead of openly like just putting a placeholder there, I honestly believe that folks put God in as a substitute for the universe, because they don't know how to metabolize it in any other way.
Okay, 5-second rebuttal.
Yeah.
The bearded dude that's painted on everybody's ceilings with his dick out is supposed to be a metaphor that's representing a wise man who is powerful and strong, who created the universe. It was to communicate to medieval peasantry who were largely illiterate a conception of God. But that's like I don't know, it's like looking at like the Marvel superhero universe, I guess. This might be a little bit crude to religious people, and being like, Thor would never look like that because the void of space would fracture his hair because there's there's vacuum and shit. Like dude, like the visage of God for medieval peasantry need not concern you. It was basically metaphors for illiterates.
Like, it's not just that it's a peasantry thing. It goes into the modern age, to where even when I talk to people about like the modern interpretations of how we view the universe, it's schizophrenic for most people, is that they cannot actually metabolize that they are literally this itty bitty microscopic piece of the universe that they can't even like fundamentally place themselves in.
Okay, you want the real? I think God was a singularity that is without time that exists, and he got so bored with existing as a singularity that he committed suicide and exploded his essence across all of nothingness in order to create fractals of himself. And we are the fractals of God communicating with ourselves, and eventually we'll be sucked back into the singularity, and that singularity people conceptualize as heaven.
The conclusion of this is that Ty just wants to be a worse Neil deGrasse Tyson. He just wants everybody to be thinking about like how tiny they are and how nothing matters.
No. Wait, whoa. Hold your fucking phone here. Like, I will never.
We gotta let Layman be the singularity for a minute and get his stuff in this. I'm only in a hurry because they gotta go. That's the only reason I'm in a hurry.
I've just been listening.
Well, you said that you wanted to get a last word in on it and book recommendations.
Well, when they were done, yeah.
I can hang out for some drama for a bit. I'll just suffer and shoot and edit my content tomorrow. It's fine.
I'll just close out that with I will never be the type to say that it doesn't matter, that it's all blatant nihilism and shit. I am an objective moralist in the regards that I think there is absolutely things that you fucking don't do, and if there are lines that you have to cross those lines with fucking diligence,
independent of human opinion.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. That's the most important part. Yeah. So yeah, I would just before I have to dip, I just want to recommend some stuff. So I wanted to recommend to you, Tom, some books that really helped me when I had basically a sober ego death back in 2018, and I was trying to figure out who I was. Here's some books that I found pretty fucking helpful. So one of those books was The Transcendental Unity of Religions by Fridtjof Schwann. His name is fucking hard to memorize the spelling of. I would recommend the title? Sickness Unto Death by Soren Kierkegaard. That helped me a lot. I wouldn't recommend this to everybody, but the Phenomenology of Spirit by Georg Hegel helped me a lot. That helped me a lot. Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics is like a really good like starting point, I think, for like trying to figure out like what your values are and stuff. I'd strongly recommend that. And if you're interested in like hearing a very, very different kind of like spin on Christianity in its totality, from a perennial Christian, I would recommend The Story of Christianity by David Bentley Hart. That's a book that argues for Christianity within that kind of perennialist worldview we were talking about from the beginning. You're going to hear a lot of really different shit that you probably have not heard before in your life, that may or may not make sense to you. But David Bentley Hart is someone who I would, put some authority in. He's got PhDs. He's a fucking academic. He knows he's very, very well read on his shit. And so I'd recommend that. And I think that's it for now that I can think of off the top of my head. Oh, Carl Jung's Red Book. Read that. That's fucking Jordan Peterson, but good. like better Jordan Peterson is, you got to read Carl Jung, The Red Book. So those are some recs that I would send your way. And this is not the conversation that I expected you to have with us, because I didn't even know what the fuck you were going to talk to us about. So we didn't know. So this is a huge hit to my noggin, and it was great. And I had a lot of fun.
Yeah. After this conversation, I want to let you guys know that I am 100% atheist now. I believe in Sky Daddy, or I'm going to call it Sky Daddy now. I'm
oh, fuck you, you fucking fedora.
Full-on anti-theist.
2008 called it puts your fucking perspective.
No, yeah. But
we're going to have to start bullying people more now.
Oh, totally. But okay, I want to say something about that before I go. So the new atheist thing is the new atheist thing is cringe. I think it is completely cringe. I think mostly with the descriptive claims. Huh?
It died. It died a horrible death. Matt
On
Dillahunty
YouTube,
got
No. Yeah. Okay. Shut up, bitch. I'm talking. So, it's died in popularity for sure. Yeah, but it definitely left a cultural impact. And all I wanted to do was just kind of quickly highlight why it did, because as cringe as it is, it was responding to something that was also cringe, which is that cringy, young Earth creationist, hyper, like, very modern kind of evangelical Protestant bullshit that happened, came into being about 300 or so years ago. And so even as much as I strongly disagree with, anti-theism and new atheism, and the claims they make mostly descriptively about religions and just the way that they articulate positions, and, a lot of dog shit positions I hear about how religious people are mentally ill and how, they're harming themselves by believing in religion, and Sam Harris saying that believing in God is the same as being like schizophrenic or whatever, like shit like that is super cringe to me, but it is responding to something real. And so that's why it is something worth like responding to and contending with, yada, yada, yada. That's all I wanted to say. So thank you.
Are you heading out?
Go on. I do have to head out. Yes.
Okay. All right, love you, buddy.
We don't even get you for drama.
Twitch drama.
Can't
Sorry,
loser.
I just hate
don't worry. I'll hang out for the Twitch drama. Don't worry about. I got it.
Okay, thank you.
Cool.
My friend.
Appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you all for talking to me. You have a good night.
Later. I'll probably
now that he's
people
gone
on again.
Oh my God.
Yeah, seriously. I probably I'm getting back into streaming more consistently now, so I'll probably do panels more often again, and probably every Tuesday. So I might hit you guys up again in a couple of days to plan something else next week with same people, maybe add Taftage and Not So Erudite and some other people. But so right before I started the stream, I was watching Not So Erudite stream after the Destiny stream ended and he left. And I was listening to you, Connor, really have trouble getting in a lot of your points. And so I wanted to hear your overall thesis on kind of, Mr. Girl leaving, Lavlin.
I was playing so nice. I was playing so nice because I was in a room. Okay, so breaking it down, actually. So Mr. Girl and I don't have a positive relationship. Like, I think you can respect somebody without liking him. I Kill Pedophiles is a fucking bop. That's a great song.
It is.
But I still have a lot of issues with his worldviews. I have issues with his rhetoric. I have issues with the way he talks, blah, blah, blah. And basically, I think anybody would agree, Destiny was the only person who understood Mr. Girl. And so, like, fully, and would be charitable and translate him and be patient with
I wouldn't say fully, but he was
social digs.
He was closer than anybody else.
closer than anybody else, and was willing to be patient and give him as much room to breathe as possible. Well, what ended up happening was because Max Carson, also known as Mr. Girl, kind of had like a meteoric rise where, one, he did his cuties review, which is why everybody calls him a pedophile. Then he kind of died for a year because I think his channel died. Got nuked, and then he created a second channel that wasn't nuked, and then he had a meteoric rise as Destiny took him under his wing, and he got access to a bunch of podcasts and conversations and all that kind of stuff. But what was happening was he was burning all the bridges with all the other creators because he was basically being his normal self. Well, what ended up happening was people were talking shit about him in the Reddit, Destiny subreddit, and a lot of his fans who there's a huge overlap between Destiny's community and Mr. Girl's community started going into the subreddit specifically to defend Mr. Girl and also to talk shit to the DGG people.
It's all the schizo people in DGG.
Yeah, so a lot. So the moderator of the subreddit, which I know I'm getting into the nitty gritty, but I want everybody to understand how autistic and eternally online this shit is. So the moderator of the subreddit is independent of Destiny. He does his own thing. And so he's in charge of the subreddit. He says, we're not going to be brigaded by all these Mr. Girl fans. Fuck you. We're banning Mr. Girl. We're banning the people who basically, stand up for Mr. Girl. Then what ended up happening was, this was maybe like a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. And then Mr. Girl was in his chat, in Destiny's chat, and in his fucking voice calls every single day, basically debating Destiny about whether or not Destiny should take a more proactive role in protecting his orbiters.
And complaining he doesn't have a voice.
Yeah, and basically one of the things that he wanted to do was, or he wanted a guarantee of, like literally, he wanted Destiny to create a Republican constitution of orbiter rights in which the orbiters, if they were being dogpiled by DGG, they would have the right to respond in the subreddit. And here's the thing. I've never had to do this for myself as a DGG orbiter because I'm not on fucking Reddit. So it's like the ability to avoid this is super easy. But Max, no offense to him.
Log off.
Yeah. So Max, some offense to him, no offense to him. Some offense to him. He's so fucking autistic and so focused on the principle of the matter that he literally fought Destiny for an entire week. And on top of that, Lav Loon, who is a sex-negative sex worker, was also fighting Destiny on this shit the entire week. And so I wanted to talk to Destiny because I felt like under the dog shit of Lav Loon's rhetoric, she has some golden philosophical nuggets. And me and Destiny, we kind of have a relationship where I'm not going to be on a show all the time. But if I have something that I think I could debate him on, I want 20 minutes to go debate. It's good for me. It's good for him. We get to spar intellectually. And finally, Mr. Girl has this big dramatic goodbye. And basically it takes 2 hours for them to have the same argument that they had before. And eventually he's like, you know what? This is toxic. I can't really deal with it anymore. I'm going to go do my own thing outside of the orbit for a while. Maybe I'll be back. And then everybody jumped into an 8 to 9 person panel. 1, to talk shit about Max. 2, to talk shit about Lavloon. And 3, to kind of put a finale cap on this entire week-long autistic drama.
Every planet was there.
Is this person gone from the space now?
No. And honestly, like, I give it about, my estimate is about a month before he's back in orbit. Like that's my estimate, because I think he's gonna chill out, do his own thing, and then for the principle of the matter, he'll be like, okay, I'll come back, and I'm not gonna be as buddy as I was before, but I'll still hang out because it's good for me.
Well, he says he's still friends with him, so he's still buddy.
Of course.
But the problem is that, 1, he doesn't have a platform on YouTube or on Twitch now, so now he's off by himself, and it's hard to drive viewers over there if he's not interacting with Destiny anymore.
On an independent website, yeah.
Right.
And that is terrifying.
And then secondly, he was complaining about not having a voice on his own drama just because he can't type in the Reddit. But he's on stream where most people see him. Very few people in the community are actually on Reddit. Like, every time I've gone on there and I get crapped on, I'm looking at, the comments where I'm getting crapped on. I never checked Reddit to see if I was getting crapped on. I don't really care. Those people are schizo anyways.
I did it out of morbid curiosity yesterday, and I was like, oof. Only good news is I had some defenders.
So people rag on you and DGG too?
Oh yeah. Somebody basically said I was like a hanger-on clout chaser for being on the orbiter panel. But here's the truth of it: is everybody who was on that orbiter panel has been in a heavier orbit than I've been for a long time, and I actually had points.
Yeah.
And the main reason why I was so respectful, you were like, hey, it looked like you were having difficulty coming in there, is because we got ABBA. He's like a multi-million sub streamer. I'm not trying to step on his toes. We got Sneeko, the recently dethroned multi-million sub YouTube. He's now banned, but he's figuring out his shit. We got Sansol, who I know, like, I think Sansol and I are similar in viewers on live stuff, but he's been in the space for a really long time. We have Erudite, who's like she's 700 viewers, dude, which is fucking crazy. She's newer than everybody, but because she has a message, she's coherent, she's clear, she has a really good viewership. So basically what I'm saying is there was a lot of big people there. I wanted to get in there and throw some elbows, prove that I could hang out with the big dogs, but I also didn't want to be so rude that they're like, who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah, I think well, so what the Lavalin is like a hardcore Mr. Girl simp too. Like, and she is. Did you hear her first phone call with Mr. Girl where she goes on and calls him and is like super like hardcore empathizing with everything he's saying while most people are crapping on him?
No offense, Lav, if this gets clipped, but I think you're you might not be a crystal girl, but you might as well be.
Is she not a crystal girl?
I don't know if she's into crystals. She's
think it's
very
a
nice and empathetic and kind of wooey and kind of emotional and all that kind of stuff.
It's a safe assumption. But yeah, they're both like, they are, you know, I don't know, two peas of the same pod or whatever. Like, they are so similar, it's scary.
Okay, am I a normie or am I the autist in this conversation? Because I
Probably
don't even know what a crystal girl is.
You're the centrist.
Yeah, so a crystal girl is just somebody who likes to collect stones and rocks and believe that they can heal your energy, and they have mood rings and fucking beads and incense shit.
They want to know your sign.
Yeah, like a hippie chick from California.
Okay.
So yeah, but anyways, the point about the drama is basically I feel like Twitch politics is relatively dead with the death of the hippy dippy. It seems like there's rumbling. It feels like there's embers. It feels like it could catch fire at any moment, and you know, maybe it'll come back in a good way. But it does feel like the loss of the hippy dippy was a big hit, and we're all kind of reeling from it.
Even Irrelevant's pretty much left Twitch now. So like Irrelevant, Chud Logic, Stardust, Destiny, Vosh, Dylan Burns, like all of the biggest creators that were, you know, the top Twitch politics people are all streaming on YouTube now. And it's uber helpful for me. I'm very happy about it. I'm just like that. It's kind of sad that I don't want to say it's sad because all of the lefties who have tried so hard to get an echo chamber are getting their wish and they are going to die off for it. And I'm kind of happy about that part.
That's the thing. Like, half of it, I do think is not hippy dippy, but I'm actually going to put it on one person. Danabo's work at getting people into the same room and, like, you know, consistently metabolizing that show was half of it. The other half is that, I mean, I keep getting into fights with my girlfriend over this shit, but like that Twitch's TOS has been so fucking prevalent to where that you just have no idea if you can say anything and get nuked, or you can literally just drop slurs all day long and get nuked. Because I've got a Samantha Banana that will say crazy ass shit on my stream on Twitch, and I never get hit. But I know if like half the time as this shit's on Destiny stream, like literally, he doesn't even slur, has a conversation that is just provocative, and bam. Now, don't get me wrong. I think he had it coming in the regards that he knew he was playing with fire. Or at least if he didn't know he was playing with fire, then he's a bigger autist than I am. But when it comes down to it, is that he poked the bear, and he got what happens when you poke the bear. But the degree at which the bear has been inconsistent in hitting people and swatting people is probably right now the biggest problem. Is that no one wants to be on that space because, like, I would love to had streamed this on Twitch, but like, does Twitch know who Tom is anymore? Like, why are you not reinstated?
Yeah,
at this point?
I think somebody is streaming on Twitch.
Oh no, I'm not at this point.
Oh, okay.
And I was gonna say, basically, like, I don't really care whether or not it gets nuked, but for me, it's like the reason why I would be anxious about it getting nuked, even though all the big players, like you said, they're dual streaming, they're on YouTube now, et cetera, is just the fact that, you know, if you lose the Twitch thing, at least with the hippy dippy reverie and all that kind of stuff, you lose like a big inroad into the Twitch and YouTube political community. Maybe that's less true now, but it's also like a little bit easier to make money on Twitch. And what I mean by that is for YouTube, you basically you stream, you do your videos, et cetera, and then if you get like a few 100,000 views, you might get a decent check. Whereas on Twitch, I mean, I normally get 5 to 20 people watching me on Twitch, and I can reliably get a $50 or $100 check once a month, every other month, something like that. And I mean, that's pretty fucking cool for kind of like the level of effort and the level of watchers that I have. So it feels like like I should stay there just because money's money and why not? But it does become a liability question where if you get nuked, are other people going to interact with you? And I guess the good trend that you noted was the fact that most people are moving to YouTube, and I think that's going to happen where the panel scene or the debate scene is probably going to be revitalized. Unfortunately, probably just on YouTube because of how many of the big debaters are banned at this point.
I think we go through like ups and downs of like new metas, and I think the panel scene was just overdone for a while, and I think a lot of people are like a little tired of that dynamic. Now, when I was on Twitch, I was doing panels, they were blowing up, my channel was blowing up. I made, in my first month on there, I made $250 just off of like subs and tips alone, and that was my first freaking month. So like I had high expectations for what that could grow into and what it was going to grow into. But I was doing panels a bit differently than most people, where it was similar to this. It was a bit more open. We were inviting on all the big dogs and like having all of them on, but it was a bit more open. I think when I talk about doing panels now and stuff like that, I'm considering going a very like Raj Royale sort of direction where like people get voted off. Like we have like, it doesn't have to be political. We're going to just bring a bunch of people on who want to talk about crap and who can stand up for themselves and, you know, have a conversation. And
Tiberius will love that. He'll love the weekly drama streams.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
yes. Yeah.
No. Actually, I'm gonna hit you on this, Tom. I wish you had been able to stay on Twitch because you were doing something that really needed to happen, and that was your panels were better than probably anybody else's because one, you didn't blow your panels up with a shitload of people, and that's one of the big things I think that killed the panel scene was that either it was an open panel that had fucking, 15 people on it, or
what are you talking about? I can hear everybody perfectly fine. Why don't you try talking over me and then
yeah, no shit. On the other side of that, even with that, respect to Prime and Dylan, 8 people's too fucking many, and it's annoying after a while. It's really fucking annoying after a while.
I'll say I love the metrics that they got. Hippy Dippy, killed it. Prime, is obviously in his niche, all that kind of stuff. But I don't think I think I've always, when I did a hippy dippy, I would fast forward to the meme part where I was like, okay, this was fucking funny. I want to watch this clip. And I could not watch the entire thing because I don't want to wait 20 minutes for somebody to fucking make a point and then wait another 20 minutes for it to get to the person I want to hear rebut and another 20 minutes and like this, that, the other. And you're waiting so fucking long for people to make points. And then not just that, but there's everybody constantly elbowing to get in. And you spend probably 20, 30% of the time just listening to people elbow each other over actually communicate ideas. And I think I don't care about your panel size, but that part of it needs to die.
Well, so that's something that so I want to really like figure out different ways to do it, because when I was on Twitch, yes, I was doing it very differently than everybody else had before. And I appreciate what you said, Tiberius, but that was not the sentiment that I got from DGG when Destiny was on. They actually, like August put in the comments, do you think this is a good panel format? Should people do this more often? And like 90% of them is overwhelming hell no. Like this was, they did not like the idea at all.
Okay. No. Hold up, though. What people want and what people watch are two different fucking things. And that's, dude, I've had so many people I've had so many people be like, bro, you should review this. You should review that. You should watch this content. You should react to this, blah, blah, blah. And of course, that person's really passionate, and I'm sure they watch whatever I created. But it's like, you know, stupid shit show debate, blah, blah, blah. Who gives a fuck? 20K views. Fucking like nuanced, interesting conversation with a subject matter expert with a little bit of pushback, but actually good information communicated. 500 views.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, you can't. The scale, what people say they want and what most people actually want is completely fucking different. And I would only pay attention to the metrics.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the algorithm is God.
Yeah, that's a good point, because he did actually get well above his average views at the time for my panel when he posted it. It was because it had like him, Denims, Dylan Burns, RGR, I forget, Irrelevant. Yes, like it was a very good panel. So, but so with what you're saying, like I want to do it differently. I want to do it kind of like Raj Royale, where you get to vote people off. But I also want to have it actually where everybody has a turn and everybody has 2 minutes, and it just goes down the line the entire time.
No.
Each person responding to each person and giving their point, and then going back, starting over, and then people start getting voted off, and you get less and less people, and the
People
time
like
gets
me are
larger and
really bad
larger.
at yelling over people.
It's
I'm not
gonna be
good
the-
enough at interrupting.
Yeah.
It's going to be American presidential debate. Like, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah.
We'll see how it works. I wish you the best. My issue here, and I'm probably going to get a little bit of trouble depending on how many of these fuckers are watching, is that I have yet to talk to Steven. Like, we've never interacted at all.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm going to have to, I'd ask him about Factorio, to be honest. But the other side of that is
I'm playing
DDG.
Factorio.
Like, DDG is a fucking maelstrom.
DGG.
And when you, DDG. DGG. Fucking whatever, right? I'm sorry. I'm thinking about destroyers right now. Okay. Anyway, let's just call them for what they are. This is a massive amount of people who are an audience, right? And the problem with an audience is that the audience is a shitstorm. And 9 times out of 10, they will tell you they want this, this, and this. And whenever you actually do this, this, and this, you don't get fuck all.
Mm-hmm.
What they want are 3 things. Number 1, they want to be entertained. They want the gravity, right? They want to enjoy their moment, because we all have precious time. Second part here is that I don't know how to put this into words. It's not information necessarily that they want, but they do want a sense of picture. I'll put it in that regard. They want something like highlighted and underlined to where it's not necessarily the information. Like, I'll even put it in this regard. They want the metaphor in the regards that they want the picture painted that actually like shows like an undeniable truth. Like, this is one thing that I want to talk about more with other creators in politics, is that I think no matter if you're right or left, is that if you are able to sell the audience on something that they feel like is fundamentally true, that like they metabolize that, zing, you're gone. Which apparently I'm terrible at, because I do not get views. But the third thing is that my dog is barking and being a pain in the ass. So I want to take him out. But anyway, I'll be right back.
I mean,
You haven't gotten in a long time. Throw an elbow.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm good at content, you know? Like I want the things that like you were describing that don't get views, right? I want to have a good serious conversation that we get have a good resolution to, and we both learn things. And
I'm not good at content either, bro.
Right? So like, no, yeah, like, so like I don't do a lot of my own, but like I did a debate on Not So Erudite stream on like the GOP stuff with Taftaj and Ruminate, and I thought it was good. I thought it was pretty great, and way below her average views. That kind of thing happens every time I do something like that, like small forum conversation kind of stuff that I'm on for somebody else that just doesn't do well for them. So I'm like, I'm not great content. I don't I don't need to get really angry sometimes, I guess, but like sometimes I yell.
Adderall before you come in.
Yeah.
No. Okay, so let me share the secret. So if you're gonna be the straight man, you can't have another straight man. You have to have a fucking lunatic. And so that's like, you can't have 2 straight men, you can't have 2 normal people, you can't have 2, like, if you're going to have something that's going to do well, somebody has to be a lunatic. So it's either you, it's the other person, or it's both of y'all simultaneously. And that's kind of what I was thinking about with like the biggest shit shows we've had. So the biggest shit shows we've had, I don't even think were my best debates. The thing that people are most like, oh yeah, like I saw you from this thing. You know what it was? It was a fucking Lauren Southern versus Tale of Twin Rabbits debate. That's my biggest fucking debate to date.
And that was good stuff too, dude. That was good stuff.
It was so painful during the event that I talked to my there's two creators, or not two creators, there's two staff that I talked to, my editor and another guy who he doesn't do much, but he's a really good consultant. And we DM'd each other after that debate, and we were like, it's unwatchable. Like, it was so bad that this thing is unwatchable. But what ended up happening was it was such a bad debate that it was like watching a fucking train wreck. And so my most mediocre performances, I feel like I've had some pretty good performances. My most mediocre who gives a fuck performance is my most famous shit, because it was so bad, it was good. That's how horrifying this creative space is.
Yeah, it's kind of, I hate it. I
mean,
really do.
Mr. Girl got famous off of like his worst moment, where like most people were hating on him, right? Like, and this is something that I've said a lot over the last couple of weeks, because I have not grown really at all, and I've done a lot of content. I have more videos than I have subscribers. Like, I have way more videos than I have subscribers, and it's insane, like the amount of content that I've put out with large creators. I've had Destiny on a ton of times. I've done IRL stuff with him. I've had Vosh on numerous times. I've had I've had, you know, all of the big people that you would expect on many times, and that stuff does great on their channel, and they get a ton of views off of it, but I get nothing off of it every time. And I started to think, okay, what is it that I'm not doing? What is it that, like, what's the difference between me and all of these other people? And I feel like there does have to be this level of almost like lolcow, like you got to be on the edge, like you got to be a lot closer to lolcow territory, where you're very unpredictable. You're going to say things that people don't expect. You're going to react in ways that people don't expect, and that'll make it a bit more entertaining, a bit more dramatic, and that's what people are looking for. Whereas most of the time, yeah, I'm looking for something with a bit more substance, with a bit more, something objective in there that's actually interesting, and it'll actually get me thinking and challenge me or challenge other people, and that just doesn't bring in the views, unfortunately.
But if you wanted to do that, you would have to. I think another part of the problem is dedicating yourself to one format. That's something that I'm currently in a transition period, so to speak. My Warhammer 40K content, unfortunately, is 20 times more popular than my fucking debate shit. So the main channel, I think 90% of my viewership is from Warhammer 40K. And then what's funny is my debate and politics nerds also like Warhammer 40K. So there's nothing lost by making the main channel a 40K channel. So I'm transitioning the main channel to a 40K channel. I'm gonna do politics and debates on the side, and if it blows up, awesome. But what I'm saying is, one of the things that you said,
what is Warhammer 40K? What is that?
It's a science fiction universe that basically incorporates every science fiction universe into a single universe, and then it's a tabletop game, video game series, books. There's lore. It's amazing. So if you have like, I know, but that I lean into it and people love it.
I have no idea what that is.
It's a universe that has a general level of background that rivals Star Trek and Star Wars. It is Star
Trek and Star Wars are absolute vagina shit compared to Warhammer 40K. Not even exist.
Yeah, so I'll put it in this regard. The setting for Star Trek is largely, what great things can humanity do when we, can alleviate poverty and want to a large degree? Because you literally have the fucking like magical replicator that can just create almost anything, right? So, what is humanity untethered? Star Wars is what happens when we get to the universe and we find out there's a shitload of other folks out there that we got to deal with. 40K is what happens when we've actually gone to the Star Trek pinnacle, we passed that, we went through the fall, and what happens when it's always 1 minute to midnight? That is 40K.
And everybody's racist.
To some degree.
But yeah, but not against humans. Everybody's like racist against all other alien races. But the point that I was saying is I'm diversifying content. One channel, the main channel is going to go 40K. We're just going to do that. Try to make our ad revenue off of monetized video breakdowns and lore videos, and that's just is what it is. And then I'm going to break off, put like high quality political essays into their channel. which if it blows up, awesome. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And then I'll just have the debate shit. And the way that you're talking about doing panels, I'm thinking about doing panels again, because all of the things that you guys said, where you're a straight person, you're more into substance, you want to learn things, you want to do all that kind of shit. The panel, I would say 6 to 8 panel people who are fighting over something that they're passionate about, it will bring out your animal, or it'll bring out the animals of other people. And so that's where
it takes like halfway through a prime panel before I start actually yelling at people, and I do it like twice, and that's the whole thing.
Well, right, but that's like that's the thing. It's like you got to take your heartburn medicine and start screaming at motherfuckers. That's what that's what the people want. They want the blood. They want blood.
Yeah, if somebody's stupid, they want you to make them look stupid. And I enjoy doing that. That's my favorite thing about like getting online, is getting to yell at people. And it's not my favorite thing. I enjoy challenging myself. The motto of my show is challenge your thoughts. And so that's like the entire plan is I don't want people to like come in here because I'm going to tell them what to believe, or I don't want them to come here because they believe the same thing as me and they want me to just repeat back to them the beliefs that they already have, so that I can, make them more confident in what they already believe. I want people who disagree with me, who don't like me, to come into my chat. We can have fights. We can, they'll hear things that they disagree with. It'll give them a chance to rationalize things that they already believe, and it'll give them challenges to what they already believe. And that's like what I like doing here. But yeah, I don't think that that's like a very popular. People don't want they don't want to be challenged. They want you to, go ahead and repeat back to me what I already believe.
Yeah,
But
confirmation bias.
Sorry, go ahead, buddy.
Okay, yeah, confirmation bias is hell. I'm trying to figure this out, because I don't think screaming is just enough. Because as an example, at the start of the year, I was talking to Connor, and I'm just like, hey man, what are you doing with whenever you go on panels? And he's like, dude, half the time I'm just yelling at people because I've had a shitty day and I just want to vent, and the rest of it's memes and fun. And now I've gotten to a point where I'm stressed a lot. My life is like, this year's probably one of the hardest years of my life, just in the general effect of like constant agonizing pressure. So now I'm going on panels just to blow my top half the time. I absolutely get more attention like that, but I'm so stressed that half the time I'm schizophrenic in the way that I'm actually like trying to make an argument. And I'm like, am I actually making the impact? Because on one side, I know I'm not getting nearly the amount of invites that I used to, because I'd just be like pretty chill and be like, hey, look, let me work with you like this. I think this is where you're coming from. I think this is the steel man of the argument. But now, like, the more entertaining side of me is kind of coming out in regards just like, wow, dude, is that really what you think? Wow, like, you must be a sorry sack of shit, right?
Yeah.
But on the other side of that is that I've really noticed that I don't think I'm wearing out my welcome with creators, but it's like, I don't get the sense that I'm like wanted on the scene nearly as much when I'm like that.
Yeah.
Which maybe that's just
when you're abrasive or when you're chill?
When I'm abrasive.
Nah. Okay. So like I understand that. I do, but I do think that this gets back to what we were talking about with like the Twitch lefty hug box or whatever, where they I'm not gonna lie, they kind of wanted to heal. That's what they always wanted. They didn't want a competent right-winger who could hold their own in a fight. They wanted a fucking heel. And I think the only reason why they invited me back is because I was a fucking vicious fucking heel who was more centrist than a lot of other people. So I was just left-wing enough that they didn't think I was an actual Nazi, but I was just mean enough that it was a good slot to fill. But what I would say is they don't want a competent right-winger who actually knows what the fuck they're talking about, because a competent, calm right-winger who knows what the fuck they're talking about ruins the narrative that we're on the precipice of a fucking trans genocide at the hands of fucking, Trump assholes and all this kind of shit. So dude, and also I'm gonna call some shit out right now. It sucks seeing how far I feel like the lefty debate bros have fallen. Vosh used to be a cornerstone of the fucking debate community, and now he's just getting back into debates right now because everybody's been bullying him about it for the past fucking year. Xander Hall or whatever, apparently, like, Vosh's little baby brother, dude, he'll ghost DMs after he receives the first message. He'll be like, oh yeah, that would be cool, blah, blah, blah. And then you send him a follow-up and it never fucking happens. And it's like, bro, like, the stereotype of lefty creators or the stereotypes of lefties is that they're lazy, that they don't want to push for anything, they're not entrepreneurial, and they're not going to fight for it. And unfortunately, I think these guys have gotten to such a fucking comfortable space that a lot of people that wanted to create a cottage industry off of debating them can't, because they've backed into their own corners.
Yep.
And it's kind of depressing how much damage they've done to the debate scene.
Yep. Hassan, Mike from PA, Denims, like, yes, all of the biggest, lefty content creators, they got their clout from Destiny, they got their viewers from Destiny, and then they shut themselves off in a corner and just stayed there so they can hold on tight, and nobody can come and tell them how dumb they are, nobody can come and make them look stupid, nobody can come and disprove their points now. They can just sit in their echo chamber away from everybody else and keep their viewers, and they'll be happy that way. And it's really frustrating because
why is it I'm sorry, why is it frustrating? Because there is a level where I'm like, everything you're saying and the people that you exactly named, I'm like, why is it that they can't stay in that bubble? Because seriously, they will get fucking wrecked. No person that you just named is fucking competent, is actually even remotely good at rhetoric, and does not have a coherent worldview. If they want to debate me, fine, I will take the challenge. They suck.
But the issue is, my main issue is they gain their audience through other people giving them platforms, and then they don't give other people platforms as well so that other people can gain viewership. Like they shut themselves off. Yeah.
I do want to shout out Prime, Dylan, Destiny, all those folks, because they basically, what they did, Prime gives you the entry level into the debate sphere. Dylan gave you the main show for a really long time. Destiny, if you have a contention, he'll pretty much talk to anybody unless you're like an absolute schizoid. So these folks have already done so much for the community, and I think that's like it should be lauded. And I'm not saying like people have to do it, but I borderline view the people who don't do it and have the ability to as fucking cowards. Like that's kind of how I view them. It's like, bro, the only reason why you get to rest on your fucking laurels is because you fucking came off the backs of other people. And what's wild is the fucking super talented, huge multi-millionaire motherfuckers who get onto a fucking panel and freeze. That's the fucking, that's the shit I fucking live for. I'm like, bitch, you fucking do what I do and you do it worse. Fuck you.
Yep.
So I'm not nearly as involved as you guys are on this particular thing. Does their audience go looking for other people at some point, or do they just kind of hunker in?
Maybe after a few years, after they get fucking burnt and turn 18 and get a fucking driver's license and lose their virginity. Yeah, maybe after that they'll fucking look for something besides a fucking lefty hug box.
I think it's gonna happen. Yeah, I think that they have viewers because of the other bigger content creators that were on that platform. And I think that with all of those other creators leaving, coming to YouTube, YouTube has a much better mobile app for chatters. It's got, it's much better in a million different ways. And so I think chatters are going to enjoy YouTube a lot more as well, and being in the YouTube chat a lot more. And I think all of those people who sat by themselves and won't interact with anybody else, I think they're all going to die off.
We'll see. And I was going to say, so I was gonna stay an extra half hour, and then an hour, and then all that kind of shit. And now I'm literally an hour.
My plan worked. That's what I was hoping for. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was beautiful. I love talking to Ukerist. I love getting into the deep subjects. And honestly, I'm sitting at 40, but I hate to tell you guys, when we were talking about deep, weird, philosophical, religious shit, I had an extra 10 people who were hanging out and fucking listening to us. So that doesn't. So we were talking about drama. We were expecting everybody to drop in for that shit. Truth is, some people were more into the deeper fucked up shit. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, see, my problem is I touch too much grass to pay attention to the drama or to respond to panel invites.
That's sad.
But yeah, I'm gonna dip. I'm gonna go talk to chat for a minute, and then I'll decide after I get a snack whether or not I have enough energy to shoot my content tonight. Worst case scenario, we'll shoot it tomorrow. But no, it was a fucking blast. This was fun.
I appreciate you coming, Connor. And the last time I did a panel, you were actually on it, so that was it's good to have you back when getting back into it.
Yeah, let's try to get the scene back up and moving, because I think people are hungry for it, to be honest.
Cool. Reply to the DM that I sent you regarding the ideas for yours.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Yeah.
Then I'll go scope that. I appreciate y'all. You have a beautiful night, and I'll catch you later on.
Later, Gator.
Yeah, I've been up since 5, so I should probably. I need to go to bed.
I'm not feeling well. I think I gotta end stream altogether because I had to twice just take off real quick because I got some stomach issues. So I appreciate you guys coming though. This is a great conversation.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and obviously, like, happy to talk more about the religion stuff. Like I said, I'm not heavy-handed with like what I want to suggest to people because everybody's going through different stuff, right?
Yeah,
like
sure.
Questioning different background, questioning in different directions. But I always have book recommendations. So
cool. Well, I appreciate it, man. Have a good night.
Yeah, you guys have a good night too. Good to see you again, Tiberius. Even though you were wrong the whole time, it's all right.
Yeah, it's all right.
I forgive you.
Hey, look, usually we're on at least like a similar page. So
yeah, we had to find something to fight about eventually. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. No,
all right.
Good to see you.
Good night. Yeah, and T, I'm glad you jumped in chat, dude. I was happy to have you.
Dude!
I wasn't
saw
looking.
This panel. No, it's fine. I saw this panel and I was just like, dude, like literally most of my favorite right wingers all in one panel, and I'm like, once a part of me is just like, why wasn't I invited? But the other side of me is just like, I gotta get in there. And so like I'm pinging like layman, I'm pinging you, and I'm like, yo, somebody like throw me some love, get me in on this shit. And of course then layman's just like, well, every atheist that I know, and I'm just like, oh, you motherfucker, goddamn you, layman.
Yeah, I was glad you jumped in. I didn't see you for a while, and then all of a sudden I look and I see all those messages in chat.
It's cool, dude. I don't pay attention to my chat nearly as much as I probably should. It's just one of those deals where, like, if I'm running the show or I'm running my stream, like, I'm in the stream, I'm in the show.
Yeah,
I'm gonna shit on the audiences for just a second here, in the regards that I fucking hate being a spectator. I have an aversion to it. I must be on the thing. I can't watch panels. I can't. Like, I can do it for a little bit.
We're all streamers, dude. That we all have some of a main character syndrome to a point.
I've got it bad. I acknowledge it. Like, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a beautiful thing personally, because I'm not gonna be a sideliner. I never will be. I will fucking go out there and I will get a bloody nose if I have to, but the long and the short here is that I don't think I'll ever let life pass me by willingly. So it's one of those deals where I love that I have the opportunity to actually like go out there and be like, yo, I want the fuck in. But also people seem to respect me enough to where I can, whether it be on Twitch or a number of these YouTube panels, I'm allowed to crash them. And I will, in the middle of the stream that I wasn't invited to, get invited on. And that's an honor and a privilege. So thank you very much. It means a lot. Especially whenever
dude. I know how it feels. You have no idea what it was like for me to get banned from Twitch, where before, anytime I jumped into somebody's chat and disagreed with them, they invite me on, or I was getting invited onto all these panels, and then out of nowhere they can't talk to me. Like, if they talk to me, it's the end of their channel. And that was just so infuriating, dude, that I could not, I couldn't have a say, I couldn't have a word, I wasn't able to get my voice out there as well. It was so infuriating. So yeah, it's nice to have everybody over here on YouTube now.
The good news is for me is that if I were to get nuked off of Twitch, I've got plenty of stuff that I can do on my own in regards to like YouTube. So like I'm not scared of that. What bothers me to some degree is that I do wonder where my particular place is right now, because I know I'm liked and respected, and like I'll be brought in, but I'm not viewed a lot on my own terms. And like this is not an insult to the person I'm about to talk about, but like Sprouticus has this problem where people love to bring him on and chat with him, but not very many people actually watch him. They watch through other people. And while I'm not,
I'm in that same bubble as well. Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Like I'm kind of wondering, like, there's a level where I know that I have a throttle, because I'm a little bit like autistic, if you want to put it in that regard, to where I'm that guy who builds fucking square cities, right? I'm literally playing City Skylines. It's a fucking grid, right? It should look, organized, professional. Like I'm, very particular, and I know that I'm not in everybody's taste. But there's levels where I'm like, I know that what I'm thinking, if I can say it in the right way, that I can convey it in the right way, I should have a far bigger audience than what I do. And something just isn't connecting there, and it's bothering the fuck out of me.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I know exactly how that feels. I feel the same exact way, and I can't figure it out. And maybe I'm just not a likable person, or maybe I just like my ideas aren't that great, or maybe I can't word them as well as I possibly could. I don't know what it is, but yeah, I'm not able to figure it out. And the most frustrating part for it, for me at least, is that it worked on Twitch. It was fine on Twitch. I could have thousands of viewers in my chat consistently on Twitch, even sometimes without anybody else on my stream, just me by myself. I could get those viewers, but I can't do it over here. I'm not able to. So yeah, I understand the frustration.
I have a theory on this, and I could be wrong, and I'm gonna bag on the audience again. But the long and the short here is that, number one, I think you're a great dude. I literally have gone out of my way twice to eat dinner with you or lunch with you. It was dinner, yeah, So it's like, I mean, clearly, I'm willing to put in the work. I know other people will too. So I don't think that's it. I think what it comes down to is that, and maybe I'm just being a prick, but the audience has a completely different priority than what I'm looking at and that I understand. And if you don't have that main character syndrome, you're looking for something else.
Yeah.
And that's something that that's probably the reality. I could be wrong, but I'm just guessing. That thing is what I don't understand, and that's what keeps me from being, I don't know if you would call it successful, but far more approachable for being on this platform. But you said you were sick, so feel free to tap out at any moment.
Yeah, I gotta go. I forgot. So actually, I am gonna stay on. I got there's a video that one of my chatters has asked me to review a couple of times now. It's where Dan and Abba talk about the music industry, and this is something that I've had complaints about a lot, is where like artists complain that they didn't make as much money as they wanted to from the label, and that some guy up top is making all of the money. And I keep explaining that's the only way the business can work. Like, it can only work that way. And so apparently they have this like exact fight on this stream, so I'm gonna go watch that and review it, I guess.